Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Morning.
Thank you so much for joining us this morning. We're just going to take another minute or so just to allow folks to settle in and get ready for a very engaging and insightful presentation. But thank you again for joining.
Great.
All right, so as we see the room start to fill up, I think we'll start to get the ball rolling here. So again, good morning, everyone. My name is Taryn Sebula, and I'm a Senior Manager of Member and Partner Success here at the Toronto Region Board of Trade. Thank you for joining us this morning for our valued member Meridian's workshop on breaking barriers, access to capital for small and equity-deserving businesses. This webinar will dissect the intricate dynamics surrounding funding issues, unveiling their profound impact on entrepreneurship, as well as offering a unique opportunity for business owners grappling with similar challenges to engage directly with experts from Meridian to find out more about their innovative lending program and unearth solutions to funding obstacles. Now, we are joined this morning by some very esteemed speakers who I have the pleasure of introducing. And so those esteemed speakers are thought leaders Kevin Van Kampen, Senior Vice President of Business Banking at Meridian, Liz Blazanovic, Vice President of Business Banking Support at Meridian, and Louise Fogarty, Lead of Partner Relationships Community Banking at BDC. Now, before I pass the mic over to our speakers, I'd like to acknowledge this land on which we are meeting is home to diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. Though you could be joining us or watching from anywhere, the board's offices are located on the traditional territory of many Indigenous nations. They share with us a sense of responsibility for intergenerational equity, the well-being of today and tomorrow. And now, without further ado, I'll pass the baton over to Kevin to get things started.
Great. Thank you very much, Taryn, and thank you to everybody who's taken time out of their busy days to join us today. We're really excited to share a lot of our findings and what we're trying to do as a financial institution to address the issue and finding like-minded partners that also share our same values and drive for change. So with that, we can, I guess, begin the presentation, Taryn. Great. So the first thing I want to do is just talk about the agenda on the topics that we're going to cover today. So what we're going to talk about today, first, some introductions, just a little bit about Meridian and Business Development Bank. We want to talk about the issues around systemic barriers, some general systemic barriers that common amongst many different underserved communities. But then we also want to talk about some specific systemic barriers that may impact some groups, but not others, and generate some awareness around that. Then we want to talk about our ability to unlock this potential. And lastly, we'll talk about how there is a need to rethink lending practices. And certainly here at Meridian and Business Development Bank, we're certainly motivated to do that. So with that, I will pass. Actually, I think the next slide, I'll first talk about Meridian. Yeah, so a little bit about Meridian. We're the largest credit union in Ontario, and then we are the third largest in Canada. We're 100% member-owned financial institution, as opposed to, say, some of, like, if you look at the big five or big six banks, they're shareholder-owned public companies. When you become a customer of Meridian, you become a member, and you actually become a shareholder of our organization. And we've been in business for over 75 years. Across Ontario, we have 15 business banking centers and 89 retail branches. We have over 27,000 business members and 370,000 retail members in total. Access to 3,700 ABMs and 24 online mobile banking. So very similar to the product offering of the large banks. Is what we have. And as of the end of last year, we had 27 billion in assets and a deposit base of 19 billion. So that's a little bit about Meridian. Now I'll pass it over to Louise to share a little bit about Business Development Bank.
Thank you, Kevin. And if we could go to the next slide, please, Taryn. Great, thank you. So for those who don't know us, BDC is a bank that works solely with entrepreneurs. We work with small and medium-sized businesses, which generally are fewer than around 500 employees. And we work with those businesses to provide financing, advisory services, and investment capital to meet their needs. As Kevin said, Meridian has been around for a very long time. We've been doing this, working with entrepreneurs for over 80 years. And today we're very privileged to work with around 1 in every 12 SMEs in Canada. We are national. We operate coast to coast to coast. We serve clients virtually and through 110 business centers across the country. We're also proud to be B Corp certified, and we work to support entrepreneurs to use business as a force for good. And size-wise, we have around 48 billion in assets under management. So if we could go to why we're here today. And this is the crux of it. Well, we're here today to talk about breaking down financing barriers for small businesses. And why does it matter? Like, why is it important to have this conversation today? Well, it's because small businesses are very important to Canada. We're a nation of entrepreneurs. Of all of the businesses in Canada, almost 99% of them are SMEs. So that accounts for around 1.2 million businesses across the country. And the contribution of these businesses to our economy is significant. SMEs contribute around 43% of our GDP, and they're also responsible for around 10 million jobs in Canada. Or to say that a different way, SMEs are responsible for around 88% of the private sector workforce in our country. So with stats like this, you can see that SMEs truly are the engine of our economy, and so their success is vital to Canada's prosperity. But what we found is that it isn't a level playing field for all entrepreneurs in this sector when it comes to addressing financing that they need to help their businesses grow and succeed. And we found that barriers exist that we're at BDC are working hard to break in conjunction with our partners like Meridian. So I'm now going to hand the mic over to Liz, who's going to dig into this topic in detail. So Liz, over to you.
So thank you. Thank you so much, Louise. So let's go to the slide that around systematic barriers. So let's first talk a little bit about what the definition is. So equity deserving, and I'm just going to read it through the screen out loud. Our groups are those that have been historically marginalized and discriminated against or excluded from social and economic opportunities based on their identity, such as race, gender, sexual orientation, disability, or immigration status. These groups face systematic and structural barriers to accessing capital, which is the money or resources needed to start, grow, or sustain a business. Some of these barriers include, and not limited to what we've shared on the screen, is really just sometimes a lack of awareness needed to start, grow, or limited, or even the building a good credit history. Equity deserving businesses are a vital and diverse segment of the Canadian economy with enormous potential for growth and innovation. The systematic barriers and challenges limit their ability to start, scale, and succeed. So if we move to the next slide, gaps around current financing ecosystems for equity deserving groups. So there are limited access to mainstream sources of capital, such as banks, credit unions, due to potentially higher reduction rates, lower credit scores, or could be because of higher interest rates. There is insufficient representation and participation of equity-deserving groups in the decision-making and governance of financial institutions and intermediaries, resulting potentially a lack of understanding, a trust, and responsiveness to their needs and realities. Inadequate availability and accessibility of information, education, and training on financial literacy, management, and planning for equity-deserving entrepreneurs, especially those who face language and cultural barriers. So we're going to go to the next slide, and I want to spend over the next 4 slides or so talking about specific equity groups that are experiencing barriers. So let's start off with women entrepreneurs. They're faced gender-based barriers such as lower income wealth and credit scores, higher caregiving responsibilities, and lower confidence and risk tolerance, which may affect their access to financing and growth opportunities. They also face stereotypes and biases, which undermine their credibility and potential. They're also often underrepresented in high-growth sectors, technology, manufacturing, engineering, and I think the list goes on. But we know that they are overrepresented in low-growth sectors, retail, personal services, and education. And I know that there's much more as well. So on the next slide, we want to talk about Black-owned businesses. And again, these entrepreneurs often face racial discrimination, bias, and stereotyping, which affects their ability to obtain funding, contracts, and partnerships. They also experience a lack of representation and role models in the financial sector and beyond, as well as a lack of tailored programs and services that address their specific needs and challenges. Black businesses are often concentrated in low-income or marginalized communities, which limits their growth potential and exposure to diverse markets. So as we go on to the next equity deserving group, we're going to talk about Indigenous. Indigenous entrepreneurs often face limited access to capital, as well as regulatory and legal barriers that hinder their participation in the mainstream economy. They also encounter cultural and linguistic barriers, lack of trust and understanding from financial institutions, and low awareness of existing programs and services that could support them. Indigenous businesses are often located in remote or rural areas, which poses additional challenges for accessing markets, networks, and opportunities. So we're going to go to the next slide. And before I pass it to Kevin, I would like to spend a minute to talk about LGBTQ2S+ entrepreneurs. They often also face discrimination, harassment, and at times violence based on their sexual orientation, gender identity, or expression, which affects their safety, well-being, and productivity. They also face a lack of recognition and inclusion, which affects their access to financing and growth opportunities. LGBTQ2S+ businesses are often invisible or marginalized in the mainstream economy and lack adequate data, research, and advocacy to highlight their contribution and challenges. Now I'm going to pass it back to Kevin.
Great. Thank you, Liz. Next slide. So now we're going to talk about unlocking potential, and so we'll dive right into it. So we've scoured various research documents from Statistics Canada reports. We've also gone out to a large number of equity deserving business associations to try to gauge the opportunities lost. And so these are our findings. So Statistics Canada told us women only own 15.6% of the businesses in Canada, yet represent 50% of the population. Those businesses generated $117 billion in revenue and employed over 1.4 million people. But there remains potential to significantly grow this over time by breaking down systemic barriers. While Indigenous peoples contributed almost $50 billion to the economy, the Indigenomics Institute recently held a conference, Indigenomics on Bay Street, which we attended in November of 23, and they believe the immediate potential is actually 100 billion. We also met with Canada's 2S LGBTQIA+ Chamber of Commerce, and they mentioned that over 100,000 LGBTQ2S+ businesses, I know I'm flipping the letters a bit, but they generate over 222 billion and employing over 435,000 people. These numbers are considered highly understated, as many members of their community are not comfortable self-identifying. And Black-owned and visible minorities account for just 7 0.8% of all businesses in Canada, and access to capital would significantly grow the 61.1 billion in revenue and also grow employment well beyond 100,000. Next slide here, please. So let's talk about the benefits of increasing access to capital. Number one, innovation. Equity-deserving businesses can bring new perspectives, ideas, solutions, and products to the market that address the needs and preferences of diverse and underserved customers and communities. From an inclusion perspective, equity-deserving businesses can create more inclusive and equitable opportunities for themselves when they overcome barriers and challenges they face in traditional financing. They can also create more inclusive cultures within their businesses by promoting diversity, representation, participation, and empowerment of equity-deserving groups. Diversity. Equity-deserving businesses can enrich and diversify the economy and social landscape by representing and celebrating the diversity of identities, backgrounds, experiences, and contributions of equity-deserving groups. They can also foster and leverage diversity as a source of strength, resilience, creativity, and competitiveness by embracing and valuing different perspectives, skills, and knowledge. From a social impact perspective, equity-deserving businesses can create positive social and environmental change by addressing the issues, challenges, and gaps that are relevant and important to them and their communities. And of course, economic growth. Equity-deserving businesses can stimulate and sustain economic growth and development by creating and expanding their businesses, their markets, their industries, the sectors that generate value and benefit for the economy and society. They can also improve and enhance the efficiency and effectiveness of the financing system by increasing the supply and demand of capital and by reducing the costs and risks of financing. Next slide, please. So what have we come up with, what we see so far as the best practices in the financial ecosystem? Enhancing awareness about available financing options and supporting it through education and training. We need to expand equity-deserving business networks and relationships through mentors, advisors, peers, and coaches that have past experience and insights into financing. We do need to collect data so we can better identify and understand the trends, patterns, best practices in order to inform evidence-based decision-making and policy-making. This is a specific area we are working with BDC to help create best practices and increase the comfort level of both our salespeople and future members around what we believe are good intentions on what we're using this data for. As we collect and build our data, we can then build out reporting and disclosures on how we're supporting equity-deserving business owners, which will only help increase transparency and accountability in the financial ecosystem. So with that, I think I pass it back to Liz. Next slide, please.
Thanks, Kevin. So let's talk about rethinking lending practices. So moving beyond conventional practices. Why lenders need to move beyond their conventional credit practices? Well, when we started today and talking about the definition of systematic barriers, we mentioned these groups are vital and diverse segment of the Canadian economy. The opportunity is significant with equity-deserving groups, and lenders need to move beyond conventional lending and credit practices. There are missed opportunities as these business owners typically rely on their personal savings and restricting their opportunity to grow within their local communities. So let's move on to the next slide. So what are we doing about it? Our initiative, supporting entrepreneurial diversity with improved access to capital. We believe our greatest opportunity is to create opportunity. Our goal is ensuring all our entrepreneurs have the support they need. And as you can see on the slide, it's increasing affordable capital, financial capability, and building connections. So let's move on to the next slide. So we've developed a program in partnership with BDC, and we're very excited to be able to deliver capital to help businesses flourish. And our program reaches these underrepresented businesses, and it's easily scalable. So I'm now going to pass it back to Kevin to share more about the BDC Accelerator Loan Program.
Great, thank you, Liz. And yeah, this is really just a sample because the intention isn't to create a product pitch here. We'll definitely provide some contact information at the end, but this is an example. So we do have a new program we just rolled out in the past 5 or 6 months with the Business Development Bank, and this is showing how we've sort of rewritten conventional criteria. If you look at the bottom box, so we have the ability to do small business loans very, very quickly, a 24-hour turnaround time up to 50,000. This is on the bottom box, that's our conventional criteria. You can see a lot of red based on your beacon score, and then we pair that with what's called the bankruptcy navigation index is on the x-axis. And so whenever we go to TransUnion or Equifax, it actually gives us 2 scores. There's the beacon score, which is the looking behind, how have you been doing so far? But the BNI score is actually a forward-looking, it's a future-looking score. So what we do is we create a matrix out of that, and we kind of determine, okay, well, how much credit would we give conventionally based on those scores? So the bottom one kind of shows what we would do in our conventional world. When we look at the top box, the loan accelerator program, but actually has 2 segments. There's a segment up to 100,000, which is the fastest way to get credit. And then we have a second segment, which is 100,000 to 500,000, different criteria. We can talk about that another day. But this just shows how we're trying to open up the access to capital, because one of the things we've heard as we've spoken to many equity deserving groups over the past 5 or 6 months is that credit score actually it is a barrier. And building a good credit score is a barrier. So we're trying to address that by being far more open to providing access to capital for those that are still building their credit score. So you can see the significant differences just comparing the 2 boxes on how much more capital is available. Now, mind you, these are all up to amounts because we don't want to over leverage people either, that they put them in a more difficult. So these are sort of up to levels. At the end of the day, the borrowing need still has to match what the borrowing is used for. So these are all up to, but certainly I hope this slide at least creates a visual that we're genuinely trying to improve access to capital and at meaningful more levels. So that sort of concludes our presentation. So at this point, we're really looking to get some feedback from those in the audience. Any questions you may have that might be out there, we're certainly happy to address those. And actually, could we maybe hold that Q&A slide up a little longer? There were some contact details there for anybody who wants to learn more. And I'll explain who those people are. So Paul Casey's our director of small business. So if you're interested in learning more because you may want to apply for this type of a loan, Paul Casey can get you in touch with a small business advisor in your area. Okay. So that would be that's who Paul Casey is. Brian Mocha is worked very closely with Business Development Bank in creating this program. So if you want to just learn more about the program generally, Brian Mocha would be a great person to speak to about that. So those are the 2 individuals that we just wanted to put out there if there's any interest in reaching out to learn further. So with that, we can now open it up for any additional questions that the participants may have.
Thanks, Kevin, Louise, and Liz. So as Kevin mentioned, we're now going to open the floor to a Q&A period. So for anyone who has any burning questions for our esteemed speakers, or would like to learn more, or just have any general comments you'd like to share, now is the time. So feel free to either raise your hand and we will address questions in the order in which they're received, or feel free to go ahead and type up your questions in the chat and I'll be sure to monitor them. I noticed that we got a couple of questions that had come in through the chat, so we will go through them again in the order in which they're received. So the first question that I received in the chat that I'll pose to the group, the first one being, how does this new loan guarantee program compare to existing small business government guarantee loan programs?
Yeah, I'm happy to tackle that one because there are, for example, there is the Canadian Small Business Financing Act, which I believe you can get small business government guarantee loans up to $250,000. The difference with that program is actually a conventional lending program. It's intended to fit inside lender's existing credit risk appetite. So for a business that maybe has a really good application, but maybe they're short on security, or maybe they have a personal guarantee. They have to provide a personal guarantee, but there's no net worth behind it. That type of guarantee program will shore up like one or two aspects of what's missing in that application. This loan program is saying it is actually creating a new credit box. It's creating it's widening the credit risk appetite in order to provide more capital to others who would have otherwise been declined. So that's the key difference. It's the widening of the credit appetite versus just shoring up a piece on a conventional credit application.
Can I fully agree, Kevin. If I can add something, other programs too are for certain types of entrepreneurs, like exporters. This is a program for any type of entrepreneur, whether they sell domestically or whether they're exporting. And it's not meant to replace any programs that are out there. It's meant to supplement. So the idea, this was designed, took a lot of time to design this to try and address gaps that we see in the market. So it doesn't mean any other programs are ending or any other programs aren't good. It's just that this is designed to supplement what those programs do. And this is a pilot. We're very thrilled to be working with Meridian on this. We're working with a small number of partners at the beginning to test this model. So it is available through a select number of partners right now, but we're really interested to see if it has the effect and the impact that we're hoping it does.
Excellent. Thanks, Louise and Kevin. And hopefully that answered our audience members' question. Feel free to pop any more comments or Q&A into the chat if you'd like to hear more from our esteemed speakers on the subject. I see in the audience we have Charmaine who raised her hand. Charmaine, the floor is yours. Oh, we have you on mute, Charmaine.
Hi, good morning. Thanks so much, Taryn, for that, and also for everybody for the presentation. My name is Charmaine. I am a Filipino Canadian, and I work with a community of Filipino business owners here in Toronto, and also have partners in Vancouver. And I was just curious if your team, through any programs, whether it's through this one, work with any community-led organizations that are already on the ground working with businesses in those communities.
I'll take that.
Sure.
So yeah, I mean, we work with multiple of organizations, and actually that's really music to my ears, Charmaine, that we actually will come out to the organizations and do workshops to support. So yeah, and we actually do some workshops around cash flows, financial confidence, how do you talk to business, how do you talk to a banker, what to ask. Yeah, the list is actually endless in regards to that. So yeah, no, absolutely. We have our team of advisors that would be participating in this and actually going in and working with the entrepreneurs. So yes, I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, great. I was just it's really because we're a brand new community organization, but really it's focused on supporting entrepreneurs in the Filipino community and emerging leaders. So I'd love to learn more about those programs and ways that I can potentially, build some bridges into the community of Filipinos here in Canada. So I'd love to learn more about how, just conversations around that.
Wonderful. Reach the contact, Bride Mocha, if you took the name. So we will definitely reach out to you and have a conversation.
Great. Thank you so much, Liz.
Excellent. And thank you, Charmaine. I see we have another question coming up in the chat here. So I'll just go ahead and present it to the speakers, which is, can we apply for a loan with Meridian if we already have an existing loan with BDC?
The answer is absolutely yes. Absolutely. So these are intended to be working capital loans. It is not intended to refinance existing debt. This is to provide new capital in the form of working capital, and it's actually quite patient capital because it's repaid over 6 years. So as opposed to other short-term working capital loans where you have to pay them much faster than that. So it's a form of patient capital. Full disclosure, one of the important things that that in order to get this loan, like we would take a first charge general security agreement over the business, which does imply that that business would also be moving all their day-to-day banking with Meridian. So they would have to move their business with us to do it. So I want to be very upfront about that, but certainly there would be no concerns about having an existing loan with Business Development Bank to move forward here.
Yeah, and BDC is in the background here. We're working with Meridian as our partner and some other partners, but we're not doing the lending. We're leveraging Meridian's expertise and Meridian's capabilities. So BDC is very much behind the scenes in this program.
Excellent. Thank you, Louise, and thank you, Kevin. And thank you for the question. Audience, the chat is still open, so please feel free to pop any more questions into the chat if you'd like to present them to Liz, Louise, or Kevin for some more information. I have one final question that is in the chat or that has been sent to me, which is, what has the new lending program response been since initially launched, and is it reaching equity-deserving business owners?
Yeah, I'll certainly be the first to tackle that one. So we've gone out and we've been on a whole roadshow since this product went live in market in mid-October. Like myself and Liz and our team, we've gone on a whole roadshow. We've probably met with 20 plus equity deserving associations, from Black-owned business associations, various women-led business associations, Indigenous, LGBTQ2S plus association, just to kind of get the feedback and the response from them. And the response has been uniformly and unanimously very positive. They feel that the program is addressing the need. And through that, we've actually received significant referrals from the members of those various associations. So that's been quite positive to see. So so I would say the response has been very, very positive. I mean, anytime you're taking a new product to the market, there's a period of time you actually have to create the awareness, which then generates a pipeline. But so we've already closed a good number of transactions, but at the top of the sales funnel, in a few short months, we've got over 350 applications in process right now. So it seems to be resonating. The one thing that is a requirement, which maybe causes a little bit of time, is that we do require a minimum 12 months of reported earnings to qualify for the program. So if a business isn't generating revenue yet, it would be too early to borrow anyway, but you do need to have 12 months of reported earnings. And once we have that statement, then we can move through the rest of the application process. And maybe, Louise, you have a better line of sight on the data than we do, so maybe you can speak to that.
For sure, Kevin. And just to reiterate, the program's open to all entrepreneurs that qualify. And Kevin said the 12 months is one qualification criteria, but Kevin and Liz can share more about that on a one-to-one basis. But it's open to all entrepreneurs. The work that Kevin and Liz have been doing, though, in the outreach, is to try and connect with those groups of entrepreneurs in the community that may have struggled to access financing in the past. So we're not excluding any type of entrepreneurs, open to everybody, but there's specific activities taking place to try and alert certain groups that this program is here. We have seen a good uptake so far, and Kevin alluded to that. We're asking, as part of the process, we ask applicants if they're comfortable to share their demographic information as part of the process. It's not a qualification criteria. We just ask applicants to share that information because it was on one of Kevin's slides earlier, and I think it's a critical point. Having that data is so powerful because being able to capture the data lets us see if this program is meeting the need that we think exists. So it's not a requirement to provide the data, but we do ask anyone that's interested and is applying for the program, if you're comfortable, I think it's 6 questions or 8 questions, Kevin, I forget the actual number. It's a checkbox. We ask people to provide that information if they're comfortable because it really helps inform us whether this program is having the impact that we hope it will. But so far, we are seeing great traction, as Kevin said, and within that traction, we're seeing that it is reaching the equity-deserving groups that we hoped it would reach. So far, so good.
Excellent. And the final question that I see in the chat is 90% of our business is in US dollars? Could we get a loan in US dollars?
Not had that question before. To be honest, I'll speak, and Liz or Louise, you can correct me, but I don't see why not. I mean, the loan programs go up to 500,000 Canadian, but I mean, I see no reason why that we could not have a USD equivalent of whatever that number is, right? So I think I'm gonna say yes.
Excellent. Oh, and I see a comment. Awesome. Thank you. From the individual that asked that question. Beautiful. So that's all the questions that I see here in the chat. So for any of our guests who are still with us, please feel free, if you have any final questions or comments for our esteemed speakers, please feel free to pop it in now. In the meantime, I'll say on behalf of myself and the Toronto Region Board of Trade, thank you to Meridian and BDC for hosting this very insightful session to our audience this morning. Liz, Louise, Kevin, it was a pleasure spending our morning with you. Thank you for spending your morning with us and sharing your thought leadership. And thank you to the audience. We appreciate you spending a part of your morning with us as well. So with that, it looks like we are just receiving some thank you for organizing. It was a great presentation and the like sort of type of comments. So I'll leave it at that. Speakers, if you have any final words you'd like to share with our guests before we wrap up.
Yeah, just thank you everybody for attending, and thank you to the Toronto Region Board of Trade for the platform, because this is just another way for us to generate awareness. So this is as we continue our campaign. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you to everyone for joining. Enjoy the rest of your day. We hope to catch you next time. Take care.
Bye-bye.